Um, I'm Marianne Fernandez, and welcome to the Wealth Collaborative November breakfast. And we want to thank CIBC for hosting our little watch party here. Hello. So the Wealth Collaborative is a group of women executives who work with high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. So we have two circles, one in West Palm Beach and one in Boca. And we're always excited, I think, to learn from and with each other and find real opportunities to collaborate. Our members span professions from wealth management and financial services to marketing, fine arts and collectibles, and legal and philanthropy. So for those who I've not met yet, I'm Marianne Fernandez, founder of The Curious Philanthropist and managing member of the Wealth Collaborative. I also want to say hello to a couple of other groups that we've invited. So special hello to the members of the Collaborative Advisor Network and to members of Purposeful Planning Institute. So welcome. So today's discussion, the balancing act, so caring for parents, children, and yourself really touches a nerve for so many of us. And it's not just a professional topic for client work, it's really deeply personal. So many of us, me included, are managing aging parents who need additional support, kids in other family, trying to have a career, and absolutely always last, trying to carve out sort of moments of peace for ourselves. So I know it can always feel like you are running uphill every day with no break and really no easy answers. And somehow we all seem to keep it going. And I feel like we do it out of love and out of duty, and sometimes simply because there's nobody else there. And it really struck me as well is that you also think about it as what you will be able to live with in retrospect. So we all know that doing it all is just unsustainable. So today's session is really about finding that more balanced way to make it all work, sort of help us guide our clients and also our loved ones through these challenges with a bit more confidence and probably a lot more grace. So we're joined by three professionals. Lauren Ratner-Bujosa from Kindred Advising. She's going to share her thoughts on psychology and family dynamics. Bal Agrawal of LifeWorks. He's going to give us some guidance on the very, very challenging task of finding caregivers for parents. And lastly, attorney Stephanie Issa Rapp from Day Pitney will hit some of the legal aspects. I also know that there are a lot of fantastic advisors on this call with personal and professional experience. So we're going to really look forward to questions and a bit of an interactive discussion after the formal comments. So I'm going to kick it off and ask each speaker to just quickly introduce themselves and then share their thoughts. So Lauren, the mic is yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be a part of this. I live in Miami, so it's hard for me to get up there in person. One day I will make it. Really, my background is in family therapy. I did work for my own family business for the first 20 years of my career. So have done it on the family side as a client and now sort of working with clients mostly in the relationship space. So the thing that I focus on most is healing families and their long-term, deep-seated relational challenges. And so this topic is really, really important, and it's something that I'm seeing so much in my work. And so I'm really excited that Marianne put this together because, again, this is such an important topic. Even my parents are in their 80s, and just seeing how to navigate some of these conversations, I've learned a lot personally, and also this is something I'm doing with most of the clients that I work with. Do you want me to just go into my piece now?
All yours.
Okay. So I think the most important thing is knowing when to have the conversation. I think having the conversation sooner than later is always important, especially because if you wait until crisis hits, it's really difficult then to have the conversations that you need to have to be able to even talk about finances, health, or safety. Obviously, when there's crisis present in a family system, our emotional maturity, our emotional intelligence can be really low just because we're dealing with the crisis, and we might be operating from, a more primitive part of our brain. For those of you that know a little bit about neuroscience, we're just operating from a place where our executive functioning, what's like our decision making, our ability to be in relationship, is just completely offline. So when we start to have these conversations at that time, obviously they don't go well. Also, I think it's important to, when you do want to broach this subject, to use I statements and really expressing what it means to you to want to help and support your family member. It's about maintaining their dignity, their autonomy. There's so much fear for people as they age and get older. There's so many fears that can come up. And so they might be operating from that place of fear and push you away or feel like they don't need help, when we know everybody needs help. Even us in our primes, we need support and help in our lives. And so just understand that when this protection, some might call it resistance. I don't prefer that word. I like the word protection, because it's like trying to protect what they know, trying to protect the life they had as an adult, an individual operating independently. Just understanding when you see that protection come up, it is a sign of fear, and it maybe just needs a little bit of space and some kindness, some empathy. Not the time to kind of bulldoze in, like, I'm taking away your license, I'm taking away your independence. Another important topic is being proactive with your relationship with your siblings. If you have siblings, you most likely are going to be in a caregiving dynamic with your parents, your family. So if there are tensions and relational challenges now, this is the time to look at that. Maybe working with a coach, working with a family therapist to help work through some of that. There's like really deep ways you can go into this, or there's more surface ways of just like, can we create a plan of how we're going to do this, how we're going to create balance for the family? It's important to acknowledge each person's circumstance. Usually a sibling that lives close to the parent is going to get the bulk of the caregiving responsibility just because of their proximity. This also happens with female siblings, because we are more of a caregiving, like stereotypically more caregiving. A lot of times caregiving duties will fall to female siblings. So it's a good time to start talking about it and be open about it before crisis hits. Another thing, back to sort of this protection that can come up when you want to help and there's some denial or, that sort of like pushing away when it comes to an elder's limitations. We want to really validate their feelings before offering solutions. I think we are master fixers. Every client I've ever worked with, especially someone who's been a mother or someone who's run a large company, master fixers. That is like the superpower. And recognizing when that's not actually helpful. Sometimes it's just being able to provide a soft landing spot for someone or a place for them to feel seen and heard can be way more effective than going in and trying to fix. So, we want to avoid arguing with people, but you fell last week, or something like that. Just really trying to use empathy to help build that trust, and, not patronizing somebody, because it's really easy to feel like if someone's losing some of their capacity, that maybe you treat them a little bit differently than you would have treated them when they were at full capacity. Again, recognizing what's beneath the protection. Usually it's some form of grief, fear, also pride. Pride can be a big part of just like wanting to be able to take care of themselves. That's a fundamental human need. And then also, I wanted to put in here, sometimes we have to let go of control and let things happen. Some elders are not going to work with you or help you or be transparent. I'm dealing with this with a family where the son wants to know the plan because they have a sister that has some mental health issues and he knows he's going to be responsible. So he wants to know the plan. And the mother is like, I don't feel trust with you. I don't want to share anything. Like, I don't want to be transparent. So we have to honor also the decisions as, you know, as the younger in the dynamic. We can't force someone to do what we want them to do. And then the last thing I'll share is, and I think Bal probably will go into this a little bit, when you are in the caregiving role, the utmost importance is taking care of yourself. You've heard this, put your oxygen mask on first before putting it on somebody else. They say that every time we get on an airplane. This is so important. Caregiving is something that will completely exhaust a person. It is one of the hardest things somebody can do. And the reality of burnout is very real for many people who experience this and end up in this role, because there's this feeling. A lot of times I also hear in families where the person that needs the caregiving refuses to have somebody other than their partner or other than their spouse. And so that can be really challenging. And so sometimes we have to maybe, you know, do things like, this is something that's going to be a convenience for us, letting them know that we have to take care of ourselves and doing it proactively and not compromising on that. That's like a boundary that caregivers have to be able to hold so that you can be the best that you can be for the person that you're caregiving. I'm excited for the discussion. Thank you all. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. You're right. I mean, some of these conversations that we have with parents and siblings are really difficult. And one thing I'll add is, like, there's always no shortage of people weighing in on what they think you should be doing or what the expectations should be. So that's also sort of an additional challenge in trying to, navigate the, very difficult situation. So let's turn to sort of what happens when you need to now have these conversations and you need to take it into some real action and maybe bring in a little extra help. So Bal, I know you've seen this up close every day, so I'm gonna hand the mic to you to share some of your advice.
Thank you. And thanks, Lauren, for really great conversation about how to start and what's important. I'll just reinforce a couple of things. Let me give you my background. I have a engineering degree. I'm basically a problem solver. My wife had an early illness like 30 years ago, and my son was a teenager. And we went through many challenges for finding care for her and then care for him because he was a teenager. And later on, he had developed mental health issues. And that was really difficult for me. I became both mom and dad for him because his mom wasn't around. And I learned a lot of things about that. And then that experience and that challenges made me saying no one else should have to go through this experience of finding untrusting people to work in your home. And I started LifeWorks 21 years ago. And this journey this is passionate, this is personal to me. We always talk about trust as our fortress, and I'll go into details of all of those things. A couple of things that Lauren said that I want to just reinforce. Don't go on thin ice. You will get dragged into thin ice with your family member, with your spouse, your children. My son, who is adult son now, he's got mental health issues. He will drag me into anything that I can do for him. I have to find the boundaries. And he's so good and so independent once you find the boundaries. And the same thing is true for your parents too. It's always falls on a daughter, second daughter. So just the common system here that who ends up finding the care for the parents, And difficult conversations. The most difficult conversations are the most important conversations. And it's also about, independence, money, fear. Who is afraid? Are you afraid or are you they're afraid? Your parents they've lived 80 years, 85 years. They know a lot. And to say that, you need this and you need that is like, sort of diminishing their experiences. You can always say, I'm afraid, I don't sleep well, I'm worried, rather than you need this, because the I word is so important. Expressing how you feel is so important because no parent wants to see their children be worried about them, and be honest about it. And your intent of the conversation, unless you have a good intent and honest conversation, they will sense it. They will read right through it. So those are just a couple of things I want to reinforce on that. But once you have decided either you're going to give care or somebody else is going to give care, assume that if you're going to give care, set the boundaries as we discussed. But if you have somebody else going to give care, the number one thing is, do you trust them? And how do you establish trust? So you have to look at their past and present both. And please don't sort of gloss over something you observe. People don't change. You are going to meet them, you're going to interview them. The most important thing that you can do to establish whether it's a good caregiver is to check their references. And a lot of them may give you a reference that is a assisted living facility or an institution. No, you say, I want to talk to the person or family that you cared for in the past. Only 1 out of 3 or 4 people, caregivers, will really give you a good name of a family member that you can talk to and get a good sense. We get 100 applications every week and we select 10. And only a third of them are able to give us references. Oh, I don't have the son's number. I don't have the daughter's number. They passed away. Well, if you cared for somebody for a year and you don't have their family's phone numbers, no, you're not good. There's something wrong there. That means you didn't connect with the family. You considered it to be a job where you check in and check out, and you didn't engage. So that engagement with the family member is really, really a proof. Of course, you want to check all the past, which is, their driver's license, their credit, their criminal. You can check credit if you wanted to because they're in your home, and observe everything you can about their present and see what they can do. Other things are they a good fit for your family? So, some people like bubbly people, some people like quiet people, some people like that are active and take you for a walk. So all kinds of components of personality. As a child, our personalities are very limited. Like, okay, give me food and keep me clean. As an 80-year-old, there are so many layers of personalities that show up in all of us. And your parents have a layers of personality, and that fit with that personality to the caregiver personality is important. Even they start talking about political conversations or sports or something, and people really don't like each other. So those things are really important in a caregiver. Our observation is caregivers are looking for 5 things. One, the hours they have available. If they have children, then they go home at 3 and they take care of their kids. They are available only up to 3 o'clock. Or they're working at night only, or they're working only on the weekdays and not on the weekends. They have a family of their own. So hours they have available. They will be flexible a little bit. Work close to home. If you like somebody that's really, oh my God, hour and a half away, and they say, sure, I'll come. A month later, it's not going to work. Commute really is a big drain for them because they have so many other things. The caregiver themselves have a lot of responsibility in their own home. So think of that as well. The third thing they want is a good pay and paying you on time. Every week, they live hand to mouth. Just put yourself in their shoes. They're just like any one of us. Some of them are really, really struggling. We have caregivers that come and they don't have money to go back on a bus sometimes. We give them money. So really put yourself in their shoes. They really want to be paid correctly and on time all the time. And they want to get paid well. A good caregiver will take anything from $20 to $30 an hour. If you're looking for a caregiver, $16 an hour, I don't think they're going to be really happy. Unless they're happy, they will just do a job. If they're happy, they'll do an amazing work. And finally, a sense of belonging. Think of them day in and day out. They're with someone 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes 12 hours a day, and they get burnt out. The highest burnout in any profession is in the caregiving at home. And, with children, you see a different day every day, a 2 year versus 3 year versus 4 year. There's so much change in them. For parents, 80-year-old, the days are the same. It gets difficult and it gets routine. And they probably talk about the same thing. A couple of other things about, physical need. If they're not ambulatory, if they need support, make sure the person is strong. If they've got memory issue, make sure that the person has experience. And an experienced caregiver will separate the personality from the illness. They will not take anything personally. They will know that they're angry or talking bitterly or in a different tone because their illness is bothering them. But underneath that, there's a beautiful person in there. So you just have to be able to see that the caregiver can separate the two and really care with a good intent. And if you really like a caregiver, keep them. Do all you can to keep them because they're hard to find. We have difficulty. We have 10 people that look for caregivers all the time. It takes us a week to find 2 good caregivers. And we have a process and systems and technology. We smoke out 8% of false references. We have ways to, do the background check 360 view. We observe when they walk in how their behaviors are. Like, do they walk right over the newspaper or do they, are they listening properly? Are they engaged? So there's so many layers of understanding people. And I suggest a couple of books that are really good if you really want to understand. Malcolm Gladwell has great books, Blink and Talking to Strangers, that talk about personality and people. And if you're really going to search for a caregiver, be present. Don't be distracted. Be 100% present to observe everything they're doing and saying, because that'll give you a good gut feel about whether you trust them, whether they're skilled and all that. So with that, I'm going to stop and let, I think, Stephanie go on with the legal side of it.
Yeah, let me jump in real quick, Bal. And when Bal says that this is, it's very challenging to find the right match. I mean, even, me personally, it took us 12 caregivers and a year to get to someone that we trust now. 12 caregivers. Imagine onboarding, not even looking for them, onboarding them, showing them the ropes, and then having somebody leave. I think it's one of the most gut-wrenching things that you find, to find a match that really can work well with your family and try to keep you sane. Because now we have somebody who kind of tries to protect my time as well, which is really helpful. So I feel like that we have, not only a caregiver, but a partner in helping our family work, rather than just someone, like he said, who comes in, does all the mechanics really well, but still somehow doesn't provide exactly what you need. So anyway, thank you so much, Bal.
One quick note on that. Sorry to just, we have 300 pieces of information on every caregiver, whether they're allergic to cats or they can walk a dog or they're really expert in dog grooming or they can lift 150 pounds, their personality types, what kind of food they can cook, are they work in a kosher home, how their ambulatory experiences are, the readings of their Alzheimer's experiences, every type of things that you can think about that might be about a person, their ailment, and a home. We have the details, and the first thing we do is to listen to the customer for probably half an hour to 45 minutes. Everything about their family, their own situation, and then we go to work to find 1 out of 2,000 caregivers we have that's local, that matches really well. And our first time hit rate is 95% for the customer, because it's not a good thing for us to change caregivers for somebody who's 80 years old week after week. It's draining for them, it's draining for the family, it's draining for the caregiver. So thank you for, I'll stop now.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Stephanie Rapp. I'm an attorney at Day Pitney. My office is located in West Palm. We have offices up and down the East Coast. I don't want to spend a ton of time giving you my background. I've prepared this presentation while we represent ultra high net worth clients, like a lot of your clients are as well. I'm coming at this also from a personal level. I'm an only child, born and raised here in West Palm Beach. My dad happens to be 89 years old. Super accomplished professionally throughout his career, and now he's 89 years old, right? So I really was paying close attention, Lauren, when you're saying, release control. There's only so much sometimes that you can do. I have not taken his keys away. It would absolutely destroy him. Certain conversations like that, my personal theory as we go through these slides a little bit is, if you can, and it depends on your family and it depends on your parents, if you can, let them do for themselves as much as possible that they can do for as long as possible. It will keep their mind going. It will keep the family harmony sort of in place. That's where I've landed. The other thing, Ball, that you said that struck me was about sort of the approach with your parents and the I statements. So if I go in and I unload, I don't know if any of you are only children, but if you're only children, the family dynamic is a little bit different. It's like a little triangle and you're all on each other's business constantly. And the divide between parent and child isn't always as strong as it is when you have siblings. I have 2 kids now and it's nice. There's a separation there. But if you can say, I'm worried about this makes me really anxious. I'm really busy. I've got a full day. And when you do these things, it upsets me. I have found that to be much more effective. Their tone changes than, what are you doing? I told you not to do this anymore. This is dangerous. That has been ineffective when I've unloaded in that way. So I really appreciate sort of the conversation that we're having today. And I hope to share with you some more technical legal aspects that can help you. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Gina, thank you so much she's helping me. I had a little freak out last night. I do this on Zoom a lot, but not on Teams. So Gina's graciously helping me move through these slides. We're going to talk briefly about defining the clarity between lifetime and after death planning. The wealthiest clients that come in the door to sign estate planning documents still get confused between what their durable power of attorney does and what their trust does, their revocable trust. So I'm going to try and give everyone sort of an overview simply on the distinctions there. Then we'll talk briefly about avoiding the financial boomerang effect. That's a little bit of what I touched on. You're trying to help, but your kids are rebelling or your parents are not being responsive or receptive. What can we do to sort of mitigate that? And then the importance of a team effort. You can't do this alone. And we'll get to that. So next slide, please. Okay, lifetime planning. These are called sometimes ancillary documents or incapacity documents. We call them a lot at this firm. The big one for financial purposes is the durable power of attorney. That's a document where you name your agent, or in Florida, it's often called an attorney in fact, to manage your finances. The kicker on this one is that it is effective immediately. So people think about, well, who's going to manage my finances when I'm unable to do so myself? Yes, this document is important for that reason. However, you really have to trust the person that you're naming, because they have the powers that you've given them in that document the moment it's signed. Okay, you don't want to always have to tell every agent that you've named them right away. Some people hold the documents in escrow. There's things you can do, but it's important that you, or when you're speaking to your family members, understand that document is effective immediately. I'm just going to do a brief overview. There's some really specific powers in that document that are very, very, have a very strong reach with what powers the attorney in fact can do, up into including undoing your estate plan. So you really need to talk to your lawyer and be careful on what powers you're giving away there. The designation of healthcare surrogate is critical. It's critical for what we're talking about today. In that document, the person who's signing it names their agents to assist with their medical issues when the person who's signing the document, the principal, is unable to do so themselves. Okay, and Sometimes the HIPAA waiver is part of that document, and sometimes it's a separate document. It's important as well, because without the waiver of privacy for the protected health information, the agent under the designation of healthcare surrogate is actually limited in what they can do for you. In Florida, that designation of healthcare surrogate can be springing, which means it's effective when a medical provider determines that you're unable to make decisions for yourself, or it can be effective immediately. And that's a conversation to have with your lawyers as to which one you want to choose. Living wills are important. It's also, people are scared of them. I confess I'm a little scared of it myself. But when I'm explaining it to people, I say, it's a world where you're both terminally ill. Okay, you're not going to recover. And at least 2 medical professionals have determined that there's no reasonable medical probability of your recovery. That's the legal standard. So you're really not getting better when this document is in place. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the particulars of it, but just know that it's really there to protect you, but also your family members, because if you don't have one, or if you haven't given away or authorized the withholding of a certain medical procedure under that living will, then it kicks over, that decision making kicks over to the agent under your designation of healthcare surrogate. Okay, so whatever you don't authorize to be withheld, the agent under your designation of healthcare surrogate is going to make that decision. The durable power of attorney and the designation of healthcare surrogate are also important because you can think of them as ways to avoid a guardianship. So early in my career, I was a trust and estates litigator, and I did a lot of guardianship work. Guardianship is a very stressful process. It's necessary in certain circumstances, okay, don't get me wrong, but it's a very, very stressful process, and every expenditure in a guardianship has to be approved by a court, every single expenditure, okay? It's expensive. The folks that are subject to them tend to not be high net worth because they have these documents. So it's a really, really tough place to be in. In order for a guardianship to be put in place by the court, there has to be no lesser restrictive alternative to a guardianship. And these documents right here, the durable power of attorney and the designation of healthcare surrogate, those are the least restrictive alternatives. So it's super, super important when you're talking to your family members to get these lifetime planning documents in place for family harmony and for finances to try and avoid the guardianship process, okay? I talk about that because there's also a document called a designation of pre-need guardian. We tend to prepare them for folks as a backstop. So I told you that the durable power of attorney and the designation of healthcare surrogate are the least restrictive alternatives, and that's true, unless someone contests that somehow they were procured by fraud, the person that's in charge, the agent under those documents, is abusing their power. If that happens, then you can still end up in a guardianship. But this designation of pre-need guardian says, hey, court, I can't make these decisions for myself right now, but when I did have capacity to do so, these are the people I wanted to be my guardian, okay? And so it's a way for your intent to be heard when you no longer can express it. So it's good to have. Hopefully you never need it if you've executed the other 2. I am not an expert, and I told this to Marianne, on long-term care insurance and disability insurance, probably because of the world in which I practice and the clients that I serve on a daily basis. But for my own family, for all practical purposes and for purposes of the conversation today, it's absolutely critical that you consider long-term care insurance, especially if there are liquidity issues, things like that, if there aren't other assets in place that could cover the very, very high cost of medical care that happens if you have the privilege of aging, right? Same thing with disability insurance. We all think about life insurance, but a lot of times you can get in a really bad accident and not die, but you're not well, and you're no longer able to contribute to your family in the way that you had and had been relied on for years, right? So disability insurance is important. I would say if you're employed or your parents are employed, check there first, see what the employer offers, and then you can go into the private sector and explore that, okay? All right, next slide, please. Planning for after death. So those are the lifetime documents. That's what's gonna help everybody during the aging process or in case of an emergency during life. That durable power of attorney no longer controls after you've passed away. And obviously the healthcare surrogate doesn't anyway, but people get very confused about when the durable power of attorney controls. It's just during the principal's life. So then what we think about a lot is, well, we don't want to let the state or the statutes decide and intestacy how mom and dad's property is going to pass, right? Or how my property is going to pass. So you need wills and trusts, or a will or a trust. So a will is just a document, right, that is signed by the testator in the presence of two witnesses. It has to be executed properly, that identifies your beneficiaries and identifies the fiduciary, so the personal representative in Florida, and who's going to be in charge of administering, managing your assets, and making sure that they end up being distributed to the folks that you intended them to go to, or the trusts, the vehicles, you know, how the charities, however you're going to dispose of your property. A revocable trust, I'm skipping a little bit here and I'm going to go back to basic considerations. A revocable trust is called a will substitute in Florida. You can put assets in your revocable trust during your life and get a little bit more creditor protection than you would if you owned them individually. They're really powerful after death, I think, for tax reasons. There's a lot of sophisticated tax planning that can be done depending on the net worth of the family. They're also good for avoiding probate to the extent that you can, or limiting the amount of assets that go to probate, and that would apply at any asset level. So again, a good conversation with the attorney to find out, should I do just a will, or should I implement a revocable trust as well? What are you going to be talking about with the lawyer and maybe your wealth advisor when you're thinking about this? Well, the net worth, are we at a federal, if we're in Florida, is a federal taxable estate? Or is there enough there that you really want to have extra protections for your beneficiaries when they pass? Do you want them to have the assets in trust for control purposes, right? You're going to want to identify, and this is the really hard one for people, who's going to be my personal representative and who's going to be my trustee, okay, if I have a trust. In Florida, for a personal representative, it either has to be a close blood relative or it needs to be someone that's a Florida resident, okay? No similar restrictions on trust, but there's practical issues there, okay, on the trustee side. So you want to think about who you're going to trust. And so these conversations are not unlike who's going to be the caregiver, right? It's a different level of trust, but you have to be able to trust that that person's going to carry out your intent. And also what comes into play here, because sometimes it's a very difficult consideration, is a professional fiduciary, right? So you can have an institution serve as your personal representative or trustee. There's a lot of conflict. If it's complicated, if you want to take the burden off of people, that's a good idea. Attorneys, CPAs, things like that can also serve in those capacities. If there's enough net worth there, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, we can talk about gifting and funding irrevocable trusts to reduce taxes after you pass. And that really helps your family. It's really in a way, it's a benevolent act, right? Because you're helping others by giving away the money now, or assigning it in a way that does not cause additional tax burden for your beneficiaries, who ultimately will bear the burden there. Beneficiary designated accounts. This is a biggie for you and me and everyone in the room. Okay. Nowadays, you go and you log onto your account, your bank account, and they go, who do you want to be the beneficiary? And you click a couple buttons, and all of a sudden your checking account has some beneficiaries. Your savings account has beneficiaries. Guess what? If you do that by operation of law, that works. Those are your beneficiaries, and everything that you've talked to your lawyer about and spent all of this money, and your financial advisor, all of those assets that you think, okay, are funded in your revocable trust, it will not happen. Those assets will not pass pursuant to the terms of your will or revocable trust. They're just going to go outright to the people that you told the computer you wanted to be your beneficiaries. Okay, so they can absolutely defeat an estate plan. So it's really, really, really important when you're doing your estate planning, or you're assisting and you're talking to your parents who are doing your estate planning, that you ask them who the beneficiaries are of their accounts. Do they have beneficiary designated accounts? Okay. And asset titling basically goes part and part with that. How is it titled in the name of but even if you title an asset in the name of the irrevocable trust and it's somehow sloppy and you've designated a beneficiary, then by operation of law, those assets are going to go to the beneficiary. Okay. So it's really, really, really important. I can't tell you how many people come to me when they're older and we have to rework all the asset titling. That being said, there are some instances where there aren't a lot of assets, and it can be an intentional strategy, okay, to have beneficiary designated accounts, because like I said, they just pass by contract and by operation of law to the beneficiaries. Probate is not triggered, okay? So in certain circumstances, it can make sense and be a good thing, but can't ignore it. It needs to be addressed, is my point. Okay. It needs to be a conversation. You can't just do your estate plan and not address asset titling and beneficiary designations. And it probably isn't smart for ultra high net worth folks to have all of their assets in beneficiary designated accounts. Okay. So it's just something that you need to work through. Okay, next slide. The boomerang effect. This is kind of what everyone's been talking about. And so I am not the expert, other than I have parents, like I said, and I'm an only child. And so I deal with it on a daily basis. There's also mental health stuff in my family, which complicates everything, right? When good intentions backfire. So it happens with your parents when you're like me and you're frustrated, you've had a long day and you can't believe they're still driving the car. Okay. And you go in the house and you say, can't do this anymore. I'm taking the keys. Mom's going to drive. She's younger, right? Backfires, doesn't work. And guess what? They drive anyway, and then they're mad, and then you feel it's just not a good idea. Okay. The approach is important. The I statements, the calm. This is when you do this. This is how it makes me feel. Let's work together so this works smoothly. It's a much better approach. Same thing with estate planning. Hey, I think it's a good idea. Let's talk about calling an attorney. Let's get some things in order. Because it makes me nervous that all of this is going to fall on me after you pass, and I don't have time. And what if it's not what you want, right? So that's why that's important. With your kids too. I have two girls. They're my battery's okay. I have two girls. They're 10 and 12, right? So we're starting to get to the ages where they know everything and I know nothing. And so the approach with them is important too. I think it's more on making sure that they are ready to fly. I'm noticing with a lot of my friends that kids now that are going away to college are scared to death. And there's some more sort of active parenting that's happening when kids go away to college, perhaps because things were overlooked or not done in order to create sort of happiness, I think, when they're little. So it's important to start early, I'm seeing, and let kids understand that there are limits, there are boundaries, there are consequences, there's cost and benefit analysis. And something, I was talking about with my husband, as the holidays come around, for example, if your kids have an allowance or maybe they get money from relatives, they have some cash of their own, perhaps. You can put it in different envelopes. There can be a savings envelope, a spending envelope, and maybe charity or giving away or for the needy, or we're going to go do something for other people with this money. And then when they spend out of those envelopes, there's less in the envelope. And so then they're limited with what they can buy next time. Just teaching them that simple skill that you and I think is a basic concept is important, because the kids now don't have it, and it causes a lot of stress and anxiety and fear when they go away and you're not there to fix everything. Like you said, we good mom fixers all the time, and they need to be able to learn how to problem solve on their own. So I think that's also an important piece of this that we haven't touched on yet, is how are we teaching our kids to be prepared to be in our seat one day, right? They're going to be the sandwich generation one day. How do we give them the tools to be able to manage what's frankly a very stressful time in your life, right? How are they going to have perspective? These kids on their phones, how are we going to teach them perspective? And a lot of it, I really think, is having firm boundaries and consequences and letting them be bored and letting them be unhappy. It's not our job to make them happy all the time. We weren't happy as kids every minute of the day. So it's important that we weren't, right? It was good days, bad days. So, it's important that they are equipped with the tools to sometimes be in a bad mood. And that's okay. And they can have a Saturday that they're bored and they didn't go to a birthday party because mom had to prepare for a presentation. I don't know. It's okay. We had to turn on the TV, and watch a few shows, not on our iPad, on the TV from like 20 feet. So just little things like that, I think are important that we enforce. And it has nothing to do with estate planning. Self-care too. We spend so much time trying to entertain our kids and the logistics. I had to go to an event for my kids' school, of all things, on Friday night, and the logistics of getting those two girls where they needed to be so their father and I could go attend 2 hours to go support their school was insane. So, you just have to take a minute and think what's important today. I've decided that at least most weekends of the month, we need one day where we're doing nothing. Kids, their homework is unbearable now. They need to sit down and be forced to do it, frankly, and not have other distractions. So anyway, back to the basics on that. All right, next slide, please. I'm gonna try to make it quick so we have time for questions. Team effort. Okay, so none of what we've talked about today can be done in a vacuum by the individual quote unquote expert that's speaking on their topic. Okay, I cannot effectively do everything to make a family whole just by preparing their estate planning documents and giving them tax advice, right? I serve one piece to give them peace of mind in one area. It's important too, when you're developing these plans, that you really understand the priorities and the motivations behind what the clients say their intent is. And a lot of times that requires collaboration with the financial advisor, who probably speaks to them even more frequently than you do, because they're likely not billing on an hourly basis. When I say you right now, I'm talking about estate planning attorneys. We bill hourly, most of us. So when they call, it costs money. So they're less hesitant to just pick up the phone and call us about anything. The financial advisors have a different relationship. And so it's important that you hone in on that and you gather all of the information you can about the client before you give them their estate plan. Okay. So collaboration with the financial advisor is critical. Financial advisors, there's some that are more focused on the investment side, and some that are more focused on the trust and the wealth management side. Both are incredibly important parts of the team. You just need to know who you're talking to and what their area of expertise is, so that you can speak the same language and that you can benefit appropriately from the value that they have to bring to the table. CPAs and accountants are critical, right? They're part of the team. They have a lot of the history, and they can perform a lot of important functions, including tax return preparation. That's critical to the whole piece and IRS, right? Attorneys, there's a lot of us, estate planning attorneys. It needs to be a good fit. It needs to be a good personality fit. It needs to be a good level of expertise fit. Is this a client that needs a quick and dirty estate plan because their assets are not that high net worth, and they might not be an appropriate fit for a huge law firm that bills hourly, right? There's professional responsibility there to send them to someone who's wonderful and excellent, that can be cost efficient. Okay. But that same person might not be the right fit when you need a lot of tax advice. Okay. So again, do your research, talk to people. You can always call me. I've lived here my entire life, and I've been in a legal community for like 18 years. So I know people, I know a good fit. And if you know me, I'm not going to take a client into this firm that I think we won't be a full value add from an efficiency standpoint and a cost standpoint. So it's important, right? Don't ever be afraid to call me, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you about any of that. And more, I'm hearing about the therapist, coach, and caregiving team that's so critical. And it's giving me like a breath of fresh air personally, because the notion of bringing that team into the financial piece of it as well is absolutely amazing, right? And it's helpful. And I think it's always nice to have a check on your emotions and your reactions by a professional who can help you understand why you're reacting a certain way and help you communicate effectively with your family, really, and also with your clients. So I think that's critical as well. And I see conflict in families a lot. I saw it especially when I litigated. And I'm hearing more and more about bringing in a coach, therapist figure into the dynamic to help with long-term, maybe in multi-generational wealth planning. And I think that it's really effective and important, and we can't overlook it. how we treat each other and how we communicate information affects every single aspect of our lives. It affects our careers, it affects our day at the office, it affects our families. And so we need to know that the delivery of the information, which is also, the foundation of that is trust, is affecting the entire process. And why not bring an expert in to help on that as well? Okay, that's all I have. I talked a lot. We have a few minutes though for questions.
Yeah. Yeah, let's open it up for questions. I know it's a big topic. We've got about 5 minutes, not a lot of time, but if anyone has a burning question, please raise your hand.
When you identify a caregiver for a family, do they do a test run first, maybe work 3 days to see it's a good fit before you go ahead and hire somebody that's been vetted?
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea to be clear on that and saying, hey, come in for a couple of days, let's see how it works. And then you can make a decision. You're not setting unreasonable expectation at that time, and you're observing the caregiver is going to be on their best behavior for those 2 days. So it's going to be a waterfall from there, probably, just be mindful. Yeah. Great idea. Great thought. Yeah. Always do that. We have many families that want to do that. Some people really have a sort of a good feel for it right away. And some people really want to play it out.
Other questions?
I have a different question. Maybe, I don't know if there's an answer to this or not, but again, I'm going through the same thing. My mom's 89 years old. We found an assisted living facility for her about 2 years ago. First year was very challenging to get her in there, but what I'm finding is that the caregivers at the facility are changing. So it makes it, confusing to my mom when somebody new comes in. I mean, is that just a way of life at these assisted living facilities, or is like, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, like any suggestions on what can be done or anything like that?
Yeah, there are a lot of studies. 85 to 90% of adults want to be near home. If moving is hard for us, can you imagine moving at age 80 and leaving all your comfort and belongings and your favorite chair where it is? And there are social components that assisted living facilities provide, and sometimes it's not good and sometimes it's good. So you have to think about that. I really think that when you're really worried about your parents and you think that's a good place for them, it has to be good for them as well. There are other choices available if you really think you need 24-hour care. There's a live-in care available, which is cheaper a little bit than an hourly care. You can pay somebody directly if you really hire them directly, maybe $300 a day, and you'll get an amazing caregiver. It still adds up quite a lot. I do want to take a minute on long-term care insurance. If you really want to have a question, please always see if your parents have a long-term care insurance policy and keep it up to date. Always opt for an inflation protection as much as possible. The long-term care insurance companies are trying to curtail their cost and reimbursement and claims. So they're going to send you papers to saying, well, do you want inflation protection or not? And you might pay $1,000 more for inflation protection in your premium if you bought it 30 years ago, but it's economically a good choice. Have your financial advisor look at it. Look at the daily max, monthly max, yearly max. Look at what other things are provided in the long-term care insurance policy. Sometimes they provide geriatric care manager, case manager, physical therapy, all different kinds of things. So have your policy reviewed really well. And if you have a question, we have an expert in long-term care insurance who's been doing it for 8 years, and they can look at your policy and talk to you. And we can start the claim and do all the paperwork needed. So it's not complicated. If you're looking to buy some, I think you want to evaluate that as well for yourself,
I do have a question regarding, let's say you do hire this caregiver in your home and they can get hurt, or how are we thinking about protecting our liability exposure for somebody, slipping or hurting their back or something?
So there are provisions for that. Sometimes a home care policy will have a checkout where it's a caregiver is a part of the policy coverage for liability. Sometimes your umbrella on top of that for your parents will cover that as well. You at least want probably $1 million or more coverage, and if it's you're ultra wealthy, maybe $5 million coverage, because these claims can be pretty high. I'm not an insurance expert, but our policies are such that if the caregiver comes from us, our clients are fully protected with every possible scenario that might happen in the home. So
Thank you.
workman's comp and things like that are important part of that. A lot of caregivers get paid cash when you hire them directly, so the workman's comp is not an issue, and you might be vulnerable there.
Thank you.
I have a question, maybe for Lauren. We have some clients that are happy to be transparent, but we have other ones that are really closed off and not willing to share. Or I'm working with kids and their parents aren't sharing. Like, do you have any advice for them to sort of like break through that? Like, I have a client in particular right now where she is the healthcare surrogate for her aunt. She doesn't have the paperwork. Like, what if your aunt actually goes to the hospital and you need this paperwork? Like, there's like just such a barrier there that there's like, hey, this is on you, but I'm not going to give you any data.
I think that's a really wonderful question. And one way I think helping people connect to their own experiences, if you have an ability to talk to that aunt, is that the client or is the other person your client?
No, the niece is the client. So
Yeah. Well, I think it's being able to talk about their own experiences when loved ones have passed. Because I think anybody who's had a loved one who has passed has either directly been in a very long process with probate or all the complications that come with when someone passes, or they witnessed someone very close to them dealing with that, or they had some connection to it. The other thing I like to always help people to explore with their person or their elder is that when that person passes, we want to be able to just grieve their loss, right? Instead, a lot of us find ourselves having to go into business mode immediately.
Yeah.
Sifting through paperwork, sifting through stuff, managing all the things, right? And I think, being able to really come from a place of like, I just want to do right by you and support you in the best way. I love you. Please help me help all of us be okay through this process. That can help, but it doesn't always. I've shared that sentiment with my father many times, and he says, this is going to be your thing. I'm sorry.
yeah.
He just will not simplify his life.
What you're saying is what I'm coaching the niece to say, like, just try to open up that conversation. Like, the transparency is a gift to the family that is surviving, but.
And trying to understand why the protection is there. There's probably some story in the family of an entitled inheritor or beneficiary that ruined the ability for transparency in some way.
Thank you.
I know we're at time. So I want to thank our speakers. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody who's on the call, because I know there's so many stories. I'm sure there were many, many more questions. If you want to send them to me, I can see if I can get it to the right people. But thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.